Hello, English 11 students, and welcome to the video for week 9, day 2. As always, everything you say, do, or type is recorded, so please keep it school appropriate, and there is no saving, taking pictures, or downloading of our class or this video, etc. at any time. All right, if you take a look at the agenda, students worked on their peer editing activity if they didn't finish that from day 1 of this week, or they used their time in class to work on their narrative final draft using the revision resources, which I'll go over with you shortly. There's also an optional coffee house activity, which I will discuss with you at the end of this video, which is an opportunity for you to make up for lost points. It's an opportunity to bring your grade up. It can something you can do that will only help your grade. It cannot hurt your grade. First, as a reminder, right, all the assignments are due normally at the end of the live Zoom session. However, the deadline for the peer edit is 3 p.m. on Saturday, right? That's still the same. The deadline for your final draft of your narrative is 3 p.m. next Saturday, and I'll explain why that is at the end, towards the end of this video. And if you need additional help, please attend student support from 2:45 to 3:15 on Thursday and or Friday. Boom. You're not working in breakout rooms. So if you go to our homepage, go to this week's dates, you'll see that there's still the peer edit activity, which you can click on. That's listed under week 9, day 1. If you didn't finish that, please open that up and begin working on that. If you are done with the peer edit, then you're going to need to reopen your rough draft so that you can start making edits and work on your final draft. So students who are ready to work on their final draft, you want to make sure that you make all of your changes in the rough draft, right? You don't have to unsubmit it. You might have to unsubmit it in order to change it, and that's fine. But once you start changing things, putting in periods, adding commas, quotation marks, etc., you don't have to worry about resubmitting it, okay? You just make your changes there. I'm also going to encourage you to use the revision resources that I've provided for you on Canvas, which I'm going to go over with you. Basically, there are 3 different things that you can do for help with your revisions, right? And like making your story better and getting the highest possible grade. The first thing I would like you to do is look at the comments that Dr. Smith, Ms. Deal, and I placed within your actual rough draft. We let you know, like, if you had problems with capitalization, if you had problems with run-on sentences, missing ending punctuation, or if your dialogue was improperly formatted, etc. So please look at those comments first. Then another piece of help for your revisions would be to look at several videos that we put together. There is the proofreading help video, as well as the using formatting dialogue videos that Miss Taylor has also already pre-recorded. So she lent those to us, and I've posted them on Canvas for you to look at. Those are really good as well. In addition to that, I also put together a video about how to use Google Read and Write to proofread your story and to help you kind of figure out what needs to be fixed, etc. And we're actually going to watch that video now. If you need to revisit the video, it's also available on Canvas. But for right now, I'd like you to just watch to see how using Google Read and Write is a tool to help you do your revisions. Hello, students, and welcome to the video on how to use Google Read and Write to help you do your proofreading for your narrative. If you take a look, I just used a short section of my story here, gone so wrong in 30 seconds, to use for this video. I've gone over this before, right? But if you don't already have the Google Read and Write app, you would just do a search for Google Read and Write. When you do identify it and you add it to your Chromebook or your browser, it'll show up as this purple puzzle piece, Google Read and Write for Google Chrome, right? So once you click on the puzzle piece, after you have your story open, just like we talked about before, you place the cursor where you want it to start reading. And so in my case, I want it to start right there with my name. And then you just hit the play button and it'll start to read to you. You can adjust how quickly or how slowly this program reads to you, right? If you go to options, very quickly, right? So it's kind of moving at a normal pace, right? The 50% versus 100. It'll continue to read. It is using, I believe I have a male voice, right? And if I wanted to, I can actually have it do a translation in different language as well, right? So just something to kind of keep in mind. If you watch on my screen, I'm going to show you how, as I'm listening to the computer read my words back to me, I'm going to stop the Google Read and Write app and then make adjustments, right? Or do my proofreading. So let's begin with my name.
Sean Krause. Sean Krause. Period 10. October 24th, 2020. Gone so wrong in 30 seconds. Brian's knuckles were scraped and bleeding, but he held on tight to the handlebars of his bike. The wind blowing in his face should have been refreshing, but there was nothing pleasant about this moment.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right
You won't
there.
get away from us.
I'm going to stop it right there, right? I noticed that it kept reading when I actually wanted it to stop, right? Brian's knuckles were scraped and bleeding, but he held on tight to the handlebars of his bike. I wanted the sentence to stop there, right? I even put in the capital T for the next sentence, but I forgot to put in my period, right? Using this program helps me kind of identify when I did or did not use my ending punctuation, right? So I'm going to fix that run-on sentence by putting in a period. Now that I've done that, right, I'm going to hit play again on the player and have it resume from that correction.
Brian's knuckles were scraped and bleeding, but he held on tight to the handlebars of his bike. The wind blowing in his face should have been refreshing, but there was nothing pleasant about this moment. You won't get away from us, Julius screamed behind him, his feet pumping the pedals of his bike furiously. Brian had hurt more than his pride.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That sentence didn't sound right to me. Right, his feet pumping the pedals of his bike furiously. I'm missing a word. I left out the word were. His feet were pumping. So I have to add that in. Right, and then I'll highlight it again, and then I'll hit play to make sure it sounds right.
His feet were pumping the pedals of his bike furiously.
Perfect.
Brian had hurt more than his pride, and Julius would not stop. He had his revenge. Leave me.
I heard it again, right? There was a word missing, right? Brian had hurt more than his pride, and Julius would not stop. He had his revenge. Julius would not stop until, right? So I have to add in that word. See, I'm using the app to kind of help me figure out, like, what did I forget to put in? Did I forget to put in punctuation marks? Did I forget to put in words? That should sound good now, right? And Julius would not stop until he had his revenge. I'm going to go to the next sentence, the cursor there, and hit play.
Leave me alone, Brian pleased.
Oh, okay. So that is totally wrong. I didn't want Brian to pleased, right? Leave me alone, Brian pleaded. This is an interesting thing, right? Oops. So Google thought it was helping me and it changed the word pleaded, right, to beg for something, into the word please, which it auto corrected my spelling. But that's not the word that I wanted, right? But Google Read and Write helped me figure out that that was wrong. So I'm going to start there again.
Leave me alone, Brian pleaded. His voice was shaky and there was no way Julius heard him. I just want you to leave me alone, he said to himself. Were the tears in his eyes from the wind or sadness?
Okay, so this is another thing that I noticed in this. And in the, this program cannot read perfectly, right? It doesn't read like normal. But this sentence here, right, where the tears in his eyes from the wind or sadness, that's actually a question. But listening to it, right, and looking at how I ended it here, I have a period. So I need to fix that, right? So I delete the period and put in a question mark. So Google Read and Write won't catch every single thing, right? But making the program read to me and then watching carefully how all my sentences end does help me notice some of the errors that I've made. If I continue listening, right, the program, let's listen to the rest of my story here and see if there's anything else I need to fix.
Only Brian knew for sure. How did things end up this way?
Question mark.
How did Brian and Julius, two kids who barely knew each other existed at school, get to this point?
Question mark, right? So everything is in there the way that I wanted it. I also want to point out that in that last sentence, it sounded exactly the way I wanted to, right? How did Brian and Julius, pause, two kids who barely knew each other existed at school, pause, get to this point? If I ever want to pause in the middle of a sentence, right, because I'm not done with the whole sentence, but I just want to give it a pause, I add in the punctuation mark of the comma. If I will want the sentence to come to a full stop, I add in the ending punctuation of either a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. I hope you found this video informative. Okay. So as I had pointed out earlier, hold on, there we go. As I pointed out earlier, you can revisit that video if you need to, but I think that you would find that this would be really helpful. Another thing that you can do in addition to having the computer read your story to you, right, would be to have a friend, or a family member read your story to you, because they won't read like a robot, right? They'll read what's on the page, and then you can kind of also have them kind of weigh in, like what sounds good, what needs to be fixed. After you've done your proofreading, and again, there's other videos on proofreading as well if you want to look at those. The one that Miss Taylor put together is really good for proofreading as well. Then the next thing that you'll do, right, because you've done all your edits in the rough draft, is you'll need to open the final draft document, right? That's under week 9, day 2. Once you open that, click the button that says, open in a new tab. And when you open that, you'll see the document looks like this. It's pretty plain, actually, right? The directions tell you that after you make your edits in the rough draft document, copy and paste that revision in the box below. Make sure you also include your name, the period number, and the date, right? Don't lose that stuff. And then all you need to do before you turn this in is make sure that you highlight the essential parts of your story according to the key that I've provided, right? So and if you need help with this, right, there's a sample, which I'll show you in a second. But basically, I ask that after you've pasted your story in, you highlight the most important conflict in your story in orange, right? Where is that person versus person? Where's that person versus self? Or that person versus society conflict? Highlight it in orange for me. Highlight at least 3 lines of properly formatted dialogue in your story in yellow. If your story, then the last thing that you highlight, right, is going to be one or the other color. If your story ends in a return to normalcy, right, everything goes back to normal, highlight it in blue for me. If your story ends where something in your main character's life is changed forever, highlight the end of your story in purple for me. Okay, you don't do both, it's one or the other. As before, right, if you click the hyperlink, it'll take you to a sample, right? I just took my story, the Gone So Wrong in 30 seconds, right? I put that in there and I highlighted everything according to the key. So you can kind of look at that for yourself. To help you with the properly formatted dialogue and to make sure, 100% one more time that you did it exactly the way it's supposed to be, if you go to the very bottom of that sample document, we have that sample that I gave you before, right? Where it shows you to press enter every time a new character speaks, put quotation marks around the things that people are saying, put a comma between the attribution and what is actually being said, and then to always make sure that you put the punctuation inside the quotation marks. So again, please use that resource to help you make sure that what you turn into me is properly highlighted, is the best possible draft, right? you want to ensure that it's going to earn you as many points as possible. And that is what students worked on during class. As it says here, right, during the last 10 minutes of class, I went over a couple things with students. Sorry, again, this is that review of those dialogue formatting reminders. If you wanted to pause the video here, just leave that up as you work. That's another good one to do. Then I wanted to get into next week and why things are due when they are and why next week is kind of crazy. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, so next week is weird because our virtual check-in day, which is normally on Wednesdays, right, got moved to Monday. So for us, if you need to talk with me or Miss Deal or Dr. Smith, right, you'd be joining us on Zoom, right, from 10:30 to 10:50 if you're in period 2, or from 12:55 to 1:15 if you're in period 6, right? And that's on Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, there's no classes scheduled for students. Teachers are still working and kind of grading things, et cetera, which is why things are due when they are. Then we only have one full day of class, which will be the very last day of the first quarter, right? And then the quarter ends basically after the 6th. With that in mind, right, I wanted to make sure that there were opportunities for you to make up some points. One opportunity, which I'll go into more detail in the next screen, is about an activity called a coffee house activity. Okay, and that's a really good way to bring up your grade. In addition to that, I'm willing to give students a 50% if they didn't turn in these 2 assignments before. If they complete them, don't turn it into me incomplete, right? But complete the 2-sentence story activity and complete the narrative outline and turn those in, and I'll change your grade from a 0 on that activity to a 50%. Zeros always hurt your grade. 50% can drastically improve your grade, right? So again, if you got a 0 on both of these, I highly suggest that you finish them, turn them in, and get that 50% for each of them. And if you've got the time still, right, do the coffee house activity, which I'll talk about in a second. If you do the 2-sentence story activity and the narrative outline, it must be turned into me by noon on Wednesday of next week, November 4th. After noon on Wednesday, I don't care if you turn it in, I will not be looking at it. I need very strict deadlines so that I can get all my work done too. So you have to turn these things in by noon next Wednesday if you want credit for them. All right, let's talk about the coffee house activity. The coffee house activity is where you record yourself reading the short story that you wrote, right? And I'm going to go over the video directions in a minute, and they're also posted on Canvas. You earn points towards improving your grade. If you decide not to do the assignment, it doesn't hurt your grade, right? It can only help you to do this activity. During week 10's class, remember how we only have one full class, you and the other students who submitted a coffee house activity will join a coffee house breakout room where everyone will basically share their stories. You can either read your story live, you can volunteer to play the recording that you made of your story, or while we're in that room, we'll just randomly select a video to watch and kind of do like a quick discussion. Right? It's nice and casual, but again, it's just an easy way for you to build up some points from what you may have lost from earlier. If you go on Canvas, right, these directions are already posted for you under the coffee house assignment. You're actually going to use Canvas to record yourself reading the story. All the directions are there. It's very self-explanatory. So you can do this on your own. If you struggle with that, just make sure that you contact me before when this is due. And remember, doing this can only help your grade. It can't negatively impact it. This is due before midnight of next Wednesday. Again, very strict guidelines. I need these things to be turned in when they're turned in, and I will only be accepting the things that are turned in when they are due and when the deadline is, right? Which for this one is before midnight on Wednesday next week. All right, and that's it. At this point, you should be doing one of two things: either turning in that peer edit because you didn't finish it from day one of this week, or working on your revisions so that you can get that final draft turned in and submitted on time. Again, the final draft is due, or the deadline for the final draft is 3 p.m. on next Saturday, not this Saturday. If you need help, there's help during student support from 2:45 to 3:15, Thursday and Friday after school. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon.